Hi guys, in this video we will see what are visibility modifiers in Kotlin. So basically what are visibility modifiers, or they are also called access modifiers. If you have learned Java, so you may know about access modifiers that are the same as visibility modifiers, or they can be also called access modifiers in Kotlin too. So basically what are visibility modifiers? So you have some properties, like you have some classes, objects, interface, variables, functions. You have many things. So assume you don't want to give it to every class. So you have an object or you have a variable in a class. So you want to restrict it, restricts its permissions or restricts the usage of the variable, so to a certain level. So what you do is you set a visibility modifier. So as the name suggests, visibility modifier or access modifier, so this specifies the access or the visibility of the property, whatever it may be. It may be a variable, object, interface, whatever it may be. They are actually the visibility modifiers. They set up the visibility of the objects or of the properties. So what are the types of visibility modifiers? In Kotlin we have 4 basic visibility modifiers: public, private, protected, and internal. As the name says, public, which is public to everything. So in the code we will see detailing about that. So basically public, we can access the public access modifier or public visibility modifiers variable or anything anywhere in the code or anywhere in your app or anywhere in your project. That is the public. Also, as we know, you don't till now you didn't specify any modifiers. Till now we didn't specify, like we only wrote like val int, val a, val b, or anything, but we didn't till now specify anything. So basically by default in Kotlin the modifier is public. In Kotlin, basically in default, the default modifier or the default access modifier or visibility modifier we can say is public. So as you have seen, we access the variable everywhere. So that is the use of public modifiers. Now the second is private. So the private is only inside the class. So if you have a class, okay, you have some functions or you have some properties or whatever you have, you can access them only inside the class. Outside the class you can't access them. So they are called private modifiers. The third one is protected. Now in the previous video we saw inheritance. We saw open class and the base class and the child class. So what the protected do is, if you declare a variable protected in the open class or the base class or the parent class, then only the classes who accessed or who inherited from the parent class or the child, all the child classes only can access the modifier or access the variable if you give it protected. And then it comes internal. So this is the most rarely used or never used variable in Kotlin. So this is like if you have a single module. So what is a module? Basically it is a bunch of code or a bunch of, if you know app development, if you have done some part before, you know we have modules, we have Gradle. So all the set of code which we have, so only that set of code can access that variables. Outside code can't access. So this is rarely used and we can't explain it now in the code, small code. So maybe in later on when we learn app development we can see out that. But for the basics we have these 3 modifiers. Now let's move on to the IntelliJ IDE and see whatever the code is. So yeah, in the IntelliJ IDE, as we have created these classes in the previous video, so we created these classes for inheritance, for learning inheritance. And if you want to check out, then you can search for inheritance in the previous video or the previous video in this series. So that's all. We created a phone class, a smartphone class, which was the phone class was the parent class, which is open now, and the smartphone class was the inherited class. So here as we know, we are accessing all the variables, all the functions from the main method. Okay, we created an object and we are accessing everything. Like we are accessing the calling function, the camera function, the WhatsApp function, and the maps function of every classes from the maps function. No, sorry, from the main class or the inheritance file, whatever inheritance this file. So now, as you can see here, we can access everything now. So by default, if I write here public, so how do you write actually the modifiers? You write it before the function or the variable, whatever you want to specify the modifier, you can write it. Now as you can see here, I wrote public. So this is showing as a gray color because it is the redundant code, because the ID is also saying that remove redundant public modifier, because by default in Kotlin every single function or every class, everything is public by default. So hence you don't have to access or you don't have to write public in for every function or variable. So that's why you can access the public variable, all the functions, the public functions in this main function. So if the second one is private, if I make this function or calling function private, just add private. So I made this calling function private. Now in this, so I can call, so assume think that I'll call the calling function here. Okay, so this is the init block of the phone class. Now this is the smartphone, this is the calling function, or this is the main function. Now as you can see here, if I made this function or if I made this method calling as private, now as you can see here, the calling can't be accessed. Now the calling function is not is showing an error. Why it is showing an error? If I place my cursor here, it says that cannot access calling, it is invisible or private in a super type. So what it means is that this function or this this phone class is private here. So if it is private here, then we can't access it anywhere else outside the phone class. So even if I want to have a function here or call the function here or use the calling function here, it will not show me anything, or it will give us the error. Same thing, because it is telling that make calling public. So as you can see here, this method, the calling method, can't be called even from outside the class, even its successor, or we can call the child class. Only it can be called from inside the function, sorry, or inside the class. So if I use the calling function here, so as you can see, it is giving me an suggestion, and also it is calling the function. And if I remove it here and let's run the program, so as you can see here, even we don't have the calling function, as we have the calling function in the camera. That's why it is just we can use this calling function, or let me show you clearly. So the click, or after click, as in the so here as you can see, after click the call is showing. So after click the call is coming. So we are calling the click first the camera, and inside it we are calling, after the click we are calling the calling function. So it is telling us call. So by this we can see that the open class, or the class which has the function, can access the private classes or private functions or private modifiers, whatever we call the private thing. But the outside classes or even the inherited classes can't. Now for that, another thing is there is protected. Now this is the third type. Now if I remove it here, and even if I want to call that smartphone dot calling, okay, still now it is giving me an error here, because see, it is protected. It is telling that it is protected, you can't call it. Okay, from here we can't call it, because we are not in the subclass of the protected or subclass of the phone class. This is not a class, it is the main function, simple main function, but this is not inheriting the phone class, but the smartphone one is inheriting. Can we call it here? Yes, we can. So when we use the private private modifier, you saw that we even can't use the calling function in this class, in the smartphone class, because it is not the same class. But the protected one, as you can see, the protected one only can be called by the subclasses. If I want to make another subclass of phone class or of the phone class, so we can use the calling function there. But outside of it, it just works like private. So this is called actually access modifiers. These are the topics of access. Basically, these are the access modifiers of Kotlin. So the third one or the last one, internal, can't be shown here. So whenever we will get to the Android part, or if we get to that part where I can show you, then I'll, but rarely or never it is the internal one is not used. The basically most used are also public and private, which is nothing, and default one and the private one. The protected is also not used maximum, or rarely used maybe. So this was all about the topic of access modifier or visibility modifiers. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. Bye bye.